What's your wife think about Bitcoin and Bitcoin car talk?
So I kind of keep my wife in the dark about this. That's kind of crazy. I know. Maybe she's aware of it and just kind of blocks it out, doesn't want to know. But I don't really share the episodes with her.
Hello, welcome to episode 52 of The Bitcoin Game. I'm Rob Mitchell. This episode, I speak with Mike in Space, longtime creator of Bitcoin memes and more recently, the host of the comedy series Bitcoin Car Talk. I enjoy Mike's unique sense of humor enough that just hearing his voice at the beginning of our conversation made me laugh. And here's Mike in Space.
Hey Rob, how's it going?
It's good. This is so loose. You can totally feel relaxed. I don't know if you do. I couldn't tell.
You know what? I actually have a fear of public speaking, and Bitcoin Car Talk sort of was a way. It was a personal challenge almost, just to kind of be a bit more of an extrovert, because I am typically pretty introverted. But it is fully scripted and pre-rehearsed. So I'm not that used to this kind of situation, but I'm willing to run with it.
Cool. Well, I couldn't tell. Were you surprised that I asked you to be interviewed on the show?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always honored. I'm still very surprised that people like the show at all. That I have as many Twitter followers as I do. It is a little shocking to me. I'm honored. To be fair, I have had other offers to go on podcasts, but the reason I said yes to you, and normally I say no, is that you've spoken about your process in the past, like when we've talked over Twitter, and that made me feel a bit more comfortable with the whole process rather than sort of like a live setting where you might not come off that well. So it was encouraging the way you described it, that you are trying to make the guest shine. So that kind of tipped the scales. I said, yeah, okay, let's do this.
I've been following you on Twitter since long before the show. You're aware of that somehow?
I think we might have talked, before I started doing Bitcoin Car Talk. I recall us having some discussion over Twitter. Maybe my memory's faulty.
No, mine probably is. You're probably right. Sorry then. Originally, you were this, and I actually just looked it up today because I never knew what that image was with the sunglasses, and I guess that's some supposed image of Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, there's no real significance to that except that it's a really funny image. It's sort of a troll in a sense. It was an old lady who basically painted over this expensive painting, and it just looks ridiculous. But I made it my avatar for a while. I think it's still my avatar on YouTube. I just haven't gotten around to changing it, but I don't really. I guess I do use it at the end of the episodes. I have to get better at branding and having like a coherent brand because it's kind of all over the place.
It just seems like you're having fun, so it doesn't.
Oh yeah, it's all fun. Yeah, that's the only thing that's driving me to do any of this.
So back in the day, for a while, you were just that image to me. And you seem pretty hardcore. I can't remember what, but I remember I felt like a little like, oh, this guy's kind of, I don't know if gnarly is the right word, but it's like a little like, I don't know. I didn't know what to think of you exactly. And so it was quite a change when your kind of silly face doing the Bitcoin Car Talk first came up. And I was like, oh, this guy doesn't look as threatening as I took him for on Twitter with his persona.
Yeah, I mean, there's anonymity when you're using an avatar like that, and when you put your face out there and you're on video, I think you're seeing more of the real person rather than just someone behind the tweets. I probably came off as, and I probably still do come off as a troll, and a lot of that is just having fun for the most part.
What were you doing before you got interested in Bitcoin?
I'm just trying to think about like if there's anything noteworthy there. I'm married, I have 2 kids. I'm kind of in web development, but I'm not sure there's anything of great interest there.
Web development, you're working on code? I mean, what kind of?
It's more front end, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, more front end web development than back end.
Did you have any kind of libertarian or, kind of those backgrounds that a lot of people tend to have who get interested in Bitcoin?
I think, you know what? A lot of young people start off with very kind of libertarian attitudes. And as you grow older, some of us at least kind of realize that the world is more shades of gray than black and white. And I think libertarianism has its place, but I don't know if I would call myself a libertarian.
Did political views have any part of your initial interest to Bitcoin? I guess I'll put it that way.
I think my interest in Bitcoin was more a fascination with the technology. I found out about it in early 2013, and it just fascinated me immediately. I went out and got some Bitcoin.
How did you originally learn about Bitcoin?
In early 2013, I think the price had gone up, and so it was all over the media. And I don't recall the exact source, but it was probably through mass media exposure.
And then comes all the learning and research and like the wallet. How do I do all this?
Well, even just trying to get some Bitcoin, it wasn't so easy at the time. I was just going back through my Twitter, and I noticed that in mid 2013, this was probably my second or third purchase of Bitcoin. I just went on Twitter and wrote, "Hey, I've got some voice over IP credits. Does anyone want to trade them for Bitcoin?" And it was sort of the honor system. Someone accepted. I sent them the VoIP credits. I gave them my address. They sent me back the Bitcoin, and it was great. Those useless VoIP credits turned into some Bitcoin that's worth a lot more today.
Yeah, wow, that's a cool way to get Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Did you get your first Bitcoin in Mt. Gox, or how did you get your first Bitcoin?
No, it's funny. You know what? I tried to get some from Mt. Gox, but at the time, their requirements were like you had to fax over your driver's license or something onerous.
Yeah.
I just kept putting it off. It's like, I don't want to deal with this. It seems more trouble than it's worth, and then it kind of imploded. So I think initially I was buying from some local services like some local Bitcoins and BTMs and so forth. Not getting really the best rate, obviously. There's big markups on those methods, but that's how I was getting Bitcoin initially.
Were you involved on Twitter before you got your first Bitcoin?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been on Twitter since probably 2009, 2010. But I more as an observer, right? Like most people on Twitter, you're reading other people's tweets. You're not really tweeting a lot because no one's really following you, right? So it wasn't really until Bitcoin that I felt a little bit more comfort in kind of creating content and putting myself out there a little bit.
So when you first started doing the video content, you just did some straight interviews, maybe with a little comedy in there. Had you been playing with the idea of doing this kind of a thing for a while, or how did you get started?
When I started creating content, this was sort of at the tail end of the Bitcoin Uncensored podcast, Chris Derose and Junseth. And both those two had been really encouraging towards me in terms of making content.
What conversations were you having that they knew you were even interested in creating content?
Well, I was a fan of the show, and I was communicating with them over Twitter, and I'd create some content, and I'd send them a link, and sometimes they'd mention it on the show. Once or twice, they even used memes that I'd created as the cover art for podcasts. And so I found that encouraging. Initially, I did do some straight interviews, but it wasn't really my forte. They're not great interviews, to be frank. So just to back up a bit. So basically at the sort of the tail end of BU when it ended, there was a bit of a gap there, or a void. There's a lot of inside jokes you'll notice within Bitcoin Car Talk that are callback references to things said on Bitcoin Uncensored. The biggest one is probably liquid thermite. So there was a whole bit on Bitcoin Uncensored where they're talking about Blockstream creating these thermite boxes that would explode, right? So this, I mean, it's a fanciful tale. From what I understand, that was never really the case, but it was a hilarious premise, and that kind of made its way into Bitcoin Car Talk with Samson Mao famously drinking some liquid thermite and exploding.
Okay, yeah, and as you say that, I'm picturing the clear bottle.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it looked exactly like a water bottle, so he got a little confused.
I'm just looking at all the guests you've had, and who were some of the better guests you reached out to and were really happy, decided to come on the show?
It always amazes me that anyone agrees to come on the show, to be frank. But some of the big surprises for me would probably have to be John McAfee, Scott Adams, creator of Dilbert, Brendan Ike. These are big names, right? And for the most part, I basically contacted them on Twitter, right? Public tweets saying, "Hey, you want to come on my show?" And I do that a lot. I tend to tweet a lot of people, and you know what? Sometimes they respond, sometimes they come on.
Has working and setting these things up with these people and just the whole process, any interesting tales?
Overall, the biggest hurdle is explaining to guests that it's not really an interview show, that it's scripted. A lot of guests initially agree, and then they realize, what are you talking about? Why are you sending me a script? What do you want me to do? So that tends to be the biggest hurdle. And I have had some people who have initially agreed who've backed out once they've realized it's not really an interview. But for the most part, people have been good sports about it. People have a sense of humor, and it's been encouraging.
Do you ever feel like a guest maybe is not quite getting the joke and having problems delivering right? Or
Yes. Yeah. So my favorite example of this, early on, I did an episode with Bruce Fenton, and I contacted, the funny thing is, I think I insulted Bruce on Twitter. That's how we kind of got started. I insulted him. And then I said, "Hey, do you want to come on my show?" And he DMs me saying, "What show is this?" And I said, "Well, it's Bitcoin Car Talk. I interview people in my car." And I probably mentioned that it's scripted, but I don't think he got it because he agreed to it. I sent him the script, and it was just mass confusion, partially because that particular episode was released on April Fool's Day. So the whole premise was that he was the host. So it's already hard enough explaining to a guest that it's not a real interview, but to say, "Hey, you're going to host it," it tends to be confusing. So eventually I got him on board, but the backstory behind it and just it was probably funnier than the episode itself. Just the emails back and forth about the premise and just getting him to agree to do it. And it's funny that tends to influence the episodes themselves. There's been a few occasions where the back and forth with the guest by email turns into the script itself. There's a lot of meta commentary happening on the show in that way.
Have any guests ever had input, creative input, or anything like that?
Right now, I'm fingers crossed. I'm working with Richard Stallman on an episode, and he pretty well rewrote the entire script. So I'm still waiting for him to record his part. Maybe he's trolling me at this point. If you don't ever end up seeing the episode, he was trolling me. If you do end up seeing the episode, he wrote it, basically.
Okay. If someone was to just watch one episode, do you have a favorite episode, like for a newbie to try to get them hooked on your content?
That's interesting because I have my favorites, but I don't think the favorite episodes or what I consider the best episodes are representative of the series. For example, the Samson Mao episode is probably technically the best episode. There were 4 or 5 guests on, and there's a lot of quote unquote production. I mean, the show itself doesn't have a lot of production value, but that particular episode, a lot went into it. However, if I were to start someone off with an episode that is sort of representative of the series, I'd probably say the Scott Adams episode, or maybe the Luke Dash Jr. episode.
Since I'm asking, do you have any episodes you're like, oh man, that one wasn't quite?
Yeah.
Which ones do you feel that way about?
One in particular I'm really disappointed about is the John McAfee episode. And the reason for that is, while I have heard people say they like it, I only measure it against what was written in the script, and it fell short simply because Mr. McAfee decided not to read the script or follow the script.
Shocking.
Yeah. So and sort of the script called for certain elements to be present. I wanted him to have like a machete or like a firearm. He ended up doing it over breakfast, so he's holding a cup of tea, and he's doing it over, Skype, holding his phone in portrait view. When I compare it to the script that I wrote, I'm kind of disappointed in it. However, people say they like it, so that's fine.
Have your impressions changed after you've worked with any of these people?
Yeah, you know what? Everyone has been genuinely nice, and I think if you're on Twitter all day and you're part of these flame wars, it's just the nature of Bitcoin. People start to get demonized. Everyone hates this person or that person. But I've found that just everyone has been very personable and just very nice people. Everyone gives Roger Ver a lot of flack, as an example. But I mean, he was really nice to me. That was my interaction with him.
I've been putting out the Bitcoin game since 2014, and I've managed to avoid accepting any ads for scammy ICOs or software that steals your Bitcoin. Instead, I've been able to stick to products with a track record like the world-famous Bitcoin keychain from btckeychain.com. These keychains have been around almost 5 years, and they've appeared over 1,000 times on blogs and news sites, photographically representing the topic of Bitcoin. You'll see these keychains on sites as diverse as The Guardian and InfoWars. The maker of these keychains also offers Litecoin keychains and Bitcoin fork pens. Go to btckeychain.com to learn more about the keychains, or bitcoinnovelties.com to check out these Bitcoin novelty items on amazon.com, where you can take advantage of free Amazon Prime shipping in the USA. You can also find the Bitcoin keychains on OpenBazaar.
Because it's scripted, most of the episodes I allow the guests to record their part on their own, and they send me the video when they're done. It just helps that way because everyone's busy, and to try and coordinate schedules is hard. So I just have people do it on their own. The one exception was John McAfee, who insisted on doing it over Skype, and it was just a train wreck. So since then, I just try and make sure that everyone is, kind of recording locally on their end. You don't have to worry about latency or, what. Yeah.
Sure.
One other guest I should mention who surprised me was Scott Adams, who arguably is probably the most famous person who has been on Bitcoin Car Talk. But he was the nicest person. He did multiple takes. He did it promptly. Sometimes, and I understand people are busy, but sometimes I'm waiting weeks or even months for guests to do their part. But Scott Adams, like, I'd asked him, he agreed, and a day or two later, he had his part completed, and it was exactly as it was laid out in the script. He gave me multiple takes. It was good quality video and audio, so that kind of surprised me as well.
It is interesting, just me reaching out to people, asking them for interviews and stuff. Sometimes some of the people you think would be the busiest and the biggest are just like so prompt, and
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then other people will never respond, and you're like, you could just respond and say you're not interested.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't want to. I've waited months on certain guests, and I totally get it. People are busy, and my dumb show is probably not high on the priority list. But it's like you're just waiting. It's like, well, do I email him again, or is he going to be annoyed?
Yeah.
So it's just like you're just hanging back and saying, okay, I guess he's going to send it when he's ready, and that's just the way it goes.
So technically, what software and stuff are you using to edit the show and do all the effects and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I have really no background in video editing or anything like that, so it's been a learning process throughout. Basically, for the most part, the episode is recorded using my iPhone, stuck on my windshield, and then I'll take that source footage and put it into iMovie. I'm on a Mac, and I'll do most of the editing there. I'll do small things in Photoshop to add to the video. But yeah, that's basically it. I don't tend to use anything fancy.
So how much was this kind of your way to just be part of Bitcoin?
I'm not a programmer, so my contribution is trolling and memes in the name of Bitcoin. If I can, put a smile on someone's face with a funny episode, that's what I can contribute.
And so when I think of Bitcoin humor, you and Brian Hoffman come straight to mind. And I'm trying to. I don't know if it's just different circles in Bitcoin, but I have trouble even thinking of someone else who's really into Bitcoin humor. Is there anyone else you could think of?
Yeah, it is niche. Let me think. Is there anyone else in Bitcoin humor? I mean, everyone has a humorous side to them. I mean, I think Samson Mao is hilarious at times.
Yeah, I guess go into extra step as far as creating content.
That's the thing. I know. I mean, if you look back at some of Chris Derose's videos, like Mr. Golden Teeth Corporation, he has done some funny videos. But I think Brian. You mentioned Brian Hoffman. Brian is probably the person most responsible for Bitcoin Card Talk, simply because he was the first guest. So basically, I did the first episode that did not have a guest. I was basically sitting in my car in the parking lot of my kids' school, waiting to pick them up, and for whatever reason, I was bored, and I figured, hey, I'll do a quick skit. Just it was totally improvised, and it's just silly, but people, it had a good reception, and after that, I tweeted at Brian Hoffman, who at the time I didn't really know that well, and I said, hey, Brian, do you want to come on my show? And he agreed. And that was surprising because I didn't really have any sort of following at the time or any sort of history of doing very much content. So he agreed, and we did the episode, and that it started to turn into an actual show rather than a parody of a show. Where while it's still a parody of a show, it kind of took on a structure of its own. So it became sort of a host and interview format. That second episode kind of laid the groundwork for the entire series.
Have you ever had anyone request to come on your show?
Yes, several of the guests that you've seen on the show have requested to come on.
Has anyone ever asked that you've turned down?
See, these are weird. It's kind of funny because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings.
Sure.
I mean, there are. I mean, it is true, but then they're going to think, well, he didn't. So basically, okay. So I don't want to get full of myself at all, but I think the reason, or one of the reasons, people like Bitcoin Card Talk is seeing the juxtaposition between seeing me host this terrible show, interviewing a guest that's completely out of my league. That's sort of the humor of the show, seeing me in a car interviewing Scott Adams. It's kind of funny, the whole premise of it. So I don't want to sound arrogant, like, oh, a certain guest isn't prominent or famous enough to be on the show. But I don't think you would make a very good show if they're not a prominent person in the space.
So what do you say to let these people down gently?
There's ways of working people into episodes without making them the guests.
Wow.
I'll have people on in other capacities. Or just flat out say, I'll get back to you.
When are we going to get another episode?
The new episode should be coming out in a couple weeks. It's a little different than previous episodes and has required a bit more work, but I think it'll be worth it once people see it.
Cool. I saw you mention on Twitter that you're going to release a book. Do you have any other details about that?
Yeah, I'm releasing a coffee table book next month. It's mostly illustrative with an intro or foreword by Derose. So that's going to be a lot of fun. It's available at bitcoincardtalk.com if you're interested. And it's basically representative of the show. So there's a lot of fun guests in the book and fun artwork.
So now I never would have seen this coming. What inspired you to do this?
I wanted to kind of create a physical memento of the series because it's nice to have sort of a physical artifact. And for myself, quite honestly, if other people want a copy, I'm more than happy to sell them one. But I did it mainly for myself, to be honest.
It's a little funny that, you've got this little web series you produce like a season of.
Yeah.
You've already got a book coming out based on
well, and you know what? And that's kind of the humor in and of itself as well. I've got the series structured like a TV series with finite seasons. And I just figured it would be funny to put out a book. I've got some T-shirts coming out, just really overdoing it. That's kind of been my approach here where, it's funny just how over the top I've taken this.
So what's the book going to go for?
The book is $15 plus shipping. It's available on purse.io and OpenBazaar, but I'll put a link on Bitcoin Card Talk to get you there.
And are you the person physically fulfilling these, or is it somehow automated?
Yes.
Ooh.
No, like everything else I do it the wrong way. It doesn't make sense that I would be the person to fulfill it, but yeah, I'm taking on that role.
Would you call yourself a Bitcoin maximalist?
I would say that up until recently, I probably would have called myself a maximalist, and I probably still do. But the space has gotten so weird that I don't even know what it means anymore, to be honest.
Sure, it's just a phrase.
Before we had all these forks, it seemed simpler, and I'm still a supporter of Core. That is Bitcoin to me. But the world has gotten more complicated in certain ways. And so while I'd still consider myself a Bitcoin maximalist, I like Krista Rose's phrase, Bitcoin secularist. Maybe I consider myself that now.
Have you had an experience where people you felt close to, and maybe if it's just social media or whatever in the past, and Bitcoin ended up becoming a Bitcoin Cash person, and felt any divides like that?
Well, that's why it's so weird. It's like you're following these people on Twitter, or sometimes you'll see them in real life, and you like them and you're friendly with them, and you don't want things to get weird over a Bitcoin fork. Life is bigger than Bitcoin. So I try, if someone wants to call Bitcoin Cash Bitcoin, I don't agree, but I'm not going to give them a hard time about that. I think we have to move past that.
Yeah, I'm just speaking personally that one of the very first people I met in Bitcoin is very big on the Bitcoin Cash team, and it's just I don't know, it's added some kind of uncomfortable feelings for me.
Yeah, no, I definitely feel that on Twitter. I've been called an idiot on a few occasions for not maybe towing the party line, but the way I see it, Bitcoin isn't the end-all be-all to life, and at the end of the day, these are fellow human beings, and I think we have to raise the level of discourse a little bit, because it's just so dirty right now, and honestly, it's not fun anymore to snipe at people the way things have been going.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know if it's obvious, but I mean, I actually almost like to hear opinions I disagree with more, just to kind of understand, like, because I don't quite get why you have these feelings or beliefs. So let's hear it out, rather than, you're wrong and stupid or something like that.
Yeah. I think the debate gets shut down before it even begins a lot of times, where there's certain things you can't even debate at this point, I find. Because you're an idiot, the block size is what it is, and if you disagree, you're way off base. You don't understand Bitcoin, and you know what? I am an idiot. I admit that, but I'm here to learn, and I try to be open-minded to both sides. I still put myself in the core camp. I think they are the smartest people in the room. They have the best scaling roadmap, but sometimes the best laid plans, it's not assurance of success.
Sure. And the world is very complex. Hard to be really sure what the future will bring. Yeah, even with the best laid plans.
Yeah. Bitcoin is so new. And I mean, I think there's a lack of humbleness. It's like we're so convinced, yeah, it's going to be around hundreds or even thousands of years from now. And you know what? Maybe we need to be a bit more humble here and be open to ideas. But again, I'm not a programmer, so I'm an idiot. So there's that.
On Twitter, I mean, there are many libertarians who are talk as if, and I don't know, I guess they believe it, but they definitely talk as if, Bitcoin is 100% it and everything else is a joke, and that's Bitcoin's going to be around forever. And,
Yeah.
and I'm always unclear, like, anyone who's so certain about anything is that kind of propaganda? I mean, well, how do you take all that?
I completely agree. I mean, no one has more self-doubt than me. I'm never so confident in an outcome that I'm ready to proclaim, it's definitely going to happen. I hope Bitcoin is successful. I have reason to believe that it will be, but none of us can really be certain of anything. The world is too complex for that.
So what's your take on people who act certain on Twitter about these things? What do you think that was going on?
I think they believe it. They've convinced themselves, or they're a lot smarter than I am. I mean, I think you need those people as well. Bitcoin needs adherents, but I think Bitcoin also needs skeptics. And I think that's the healthiest thing, quite honestly.
You've been a long-time listener of, like, Let's Talk Bitcoin and stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's Talk Bitcoin was probably, if not the first, one of the first Bitcoin podcasts I listened to, just because of how big it was at the time. From there, I kind of branched out to some other podcasts. But yeah, and Andreas is great. Adam is great. Stephanie's great. I listened to your podcast. I listened to Let's Talk Bitcoin and a number of the others that were on that site for sure.
That's great. When I started, there wasn't that much. And now, obviously, there's so much good content,
Yeah.
This like World Crypto Network, every 5 minutes there's current stuff.
What amazes me is that how big the cryptocurrency universe has gotten, where there's independent clusters that barely even interact, but their whole universe is unto themselves. Have you seen that? Where it's like, I'll go on YouTube and it's like, wow, this guy's got like 100,000 views on his latest video. I've never even heard of him. But he's got a whole show he's been doing for 3 years.
Interesting.
Like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
There's so many people like that. It's like, I've never even heard of you, but you've been making videos for 4 years and they're all like 50, 60,000 views. It's like, wow. And there's so many people like that.
Yeah, and I'm not even that aware of that. I guess I do stumble upon someone who doesn't really seem to know a lot, but talking about how they bought Bitcoin and, some real...
Yeah. I'm not even talking necessarily about the quality of the content, just that, there's whole like circles of content producers that are out there, that aren't necessarily even part of the cluster that I consider myself part of, the people I interact with on Twitter and YouTube, right? So like it is amazing how big the cryptocurrency universe has gotten. And we're just talking about Bitcoin, and then there's whole universes unto themselves for, altcoins.
Yeah. Huh. What's your wife think about Bitcoin and Bitcoin car talk?
So I kind of keep my wife in the dark about this. That's kind of crazy. I know. Maybe she's aware of it and just kind of blocks it out, doesn't want to know. But I don't really share the episodes with her.
I think that's the best information I've gotten from you this interview. Your wife
doesn't know,
as far as you know, doesn't.
Well, it's funny. It's funny because I recently printed out some Bitcoin Car Talk stickers, and she saw the stickers, and she's like, "Well, what? Okay, she knows Bitcoin, but why would you write Car Talk under it? What does that even mean?" She's just like, he's off on one of his dumb hobbies." It's so weird because it's not something that normally comes up in a marriage, right? Like, you might have an argument over money or housing or whatnot, but rarely does your spouse say, "Hey, I host a fake talk show in my car interviewing Bitcoin people."
So now I just got to ask more. Family members, do they know you have this thing?
So my daughters know. I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old, and they both know. They love the episodes. My brother, who follows me on Twitter, knows, but besides him, I don't think anyone else in my family is aware.
How about real life friends?
Yeah, it's funny. So I recently spoke at a conference in December.
Oh, good. Thanks for bringing that up. I forgot to get that question on there.
Yeah, so this was a blockchain impact in December, and someone there approached me and said, "Hey, they're a fan." And apparently this person happens to know someone I work with. So someone at work cornered me saying, "Hey, are you Mike in Space?" So it seems like the cat's out of the bag to a certain extent.
What was this panel about? Why, and how did you get selected to be on there?
So the conference is run by Sunny Ray. And I know I've met Sunny a few times. And I said, "Hey, if you want me to do anything for this conference, I'd be more than happy to." So he gave me a slot over the lunch break. And I don't know if it's what he or anyone else expected would happen, because the panel was meant to be about memes. And it sort of was about memes, but it was mainly Bitcoin Car Talk. So I had Brian Hoffman and Samson Mao up with me on stage, and I had a big screen behind me, and I was basically playing episodes, and between episodes kind of doing a director's commentary track with Samson and Brian. So I don't know if the audience understood what was going on or if it was mainly WTF, but it was fun for me. I liked it.
So I didn't realize you organized that entire panel. It was your panel.
Yeah, it was my panel. I hope it eventually makes its way on YouTube. But yeah, I'm sure it was a very bizarre panel if you had never seen Bitcoin Car Talk before. One thing that was notable, so I met Jason King at that conference, and he had never seen Bitcoin Car Talk before. But he was in the audience, and he was laughing hysterically. You could hear him from the stage. And afterwards, he said he said he loved the episodes, and he'd like to come on. So maybe I'll have him on at some point.
In general, what did you think the audience reaction was?
I heard a few laughs. I didn't hear any boos, so I take that as a good sign. I met a few people afterwards, and everyone was very cordial. So I think while people might have been confused, I think they, or at least hopefully, saw the humor in it. It was a little lighter fare. So it's a conference, gets very technical at times, sometimes a little dry. So I just wanted to have something a little lighter to amuse people.
What social media accounts and et cetera do you want to have people go to see what you're doing?
You can follow me on Twitter at Mike in Space. That's my main account. I've got a number of sock puppets, but just follow me at Mike in Space. Or if you want to see any of the episodes, go to bitcoincartalk.com.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Mike.
Thank you, Rob.
I hope you enjoyed episode 52 of the Bitcoin Game. I'm the BTC Game on Twitter, and you can find show notes that include links and photos for each episode at thebitcoingame.com, on letstalkbitcoin.com, and at the Bitcoin Game on Soundcloud. See you next time.
Probably the most popular one at the moment is Bone Taze. So it's sort of an inversion of Tone Bays, and he basically tweets a lot about his haircuts.